Disney Plus wants to know, are you ready? For Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts, The New Avengers, now streaming on Disney Plus.
Let's do this.
One of the best Marvel movies of all time is now streaming on Disney Plus.
Hey, you weren't listening to me.
I said Thunderbolts, The New Avengers is now streaming on Disney Plus.
Meet the New Avengers.
That's a cool name.
Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts, The New Avengers, rated PG-13, now streaming on, you guessed it, Disney Plus.
All right, let's get this show on the road.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think so. Wait, my voice is very loud. I'm going to turn that down. But I also talk very loudly because I'm used to talking on a microphone.
I like the more of a whisper.
Get to ASMR.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, there you heard it from his dulcet tones. Kitty Cat is back in business.
Back at it again.
Joined in the studio by Dirty Keith.
Yep.
He's come in here. He's wearing black jeans.
Yep.
His hair's in a ponytail. He's wearing a black hoodie.
Yeah.
A t-shirt. His favorite t-shirt, of course. You know what that t-shirt is. We all do at this stage. And Keith, how you doing?
Good, man. I feel I'm still getting over the stag we were at.
We were at a stag. Yeah. When
yeah.
was that? It was like 2 weeks. A week.
Yeah,
Fuck,
I
I've
still
forgotten.
feel like I'm feeling
Time
it.
is a flat circle to me. A blank circle, actually, because I have no idea what's going on.
We were going to go on a pub crawl, and we made it to 2 pubs, and then we stayed there for night.
Shit. I forgot about that. Yeah.
And then you dipped early.
Oh,
the classic
just
Irish goodbye.
disappeared at one point because I just don't like I can't do goodbyes, Keith. I just need to leave.
You never do the goodbyes. Yeah.
I'm not a man for goodbyes. I'll just leave and then you'll never see me again. That's how I roll.
You're like the worst at the Irish goodbyes though. Every single night we're out, you just disappear.
Yeah.
And you're gone.
Because I feel like it.
You never
I just don't like hanging around.
That's fair enough.
I hate having to say goodbye to like 50 people.
Yeah.
Rather just be like, okay, yeah, who cares?
Yeah.
You know, I don't like to make a scene.
Well, I'm always looking for you. It's like, where's he gone?
Yeah, very sweet of you, Keith. Very sweet of you. You know, speaking of looking at
Yes.
things, we have some housekeeping to do, which is Dirty Mike. No, you're Dirty Keith. I'm Dirty Mike, I guess. I'm being Dirty Mike
We can
today.
both be dirty.
No, Malibu Mike. I forgot
Malibu
my
Mike.
own nickname. This podcast is off to a fucking flying start already, that's for sure. Malibu Mike, however I pronounce that, is back in business.
Yeah, okay, let's hear it.
Yeah, dude, it's been a minute. I've been kind of like shaming myself for my lack of horror movie watching. But you know, the days are getting, it's grand stretch in Yale evenings.
Grand stretch.
Days are getting longer. It's not so cold anymore. It's not raining as much. So that means autumn is on the way in about 6 months' time.
Yeah.
So I'm getting excited.
We're on the
already.
downslide now.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. That's the worst part of the year over. So, folks who pay attention at home to Mike's horror movie reviews, a couple I watched. So one, I'm sure a lot of people have seen, but I got around to it late, was The Bone Temple. The Boner Temple,
yes. Yeah.
as I call it. It's a good movie. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
The Boner Temple.
Did you like the 28 years later?
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I liked it. I didn't love it. I
Yeah.
liked it. I hate when they do this in fucking movies, when it's like clearly the first movie in a trilogy, so the first movie just doesn't feel complete at all.
Yes.
I hate when they do that.
Yeah.
Like, it's clearly setting up for more.
The next
It's like,
one, yeah,
oh no,
yeah.
how about you just make a self-contained movie and then
Yeah.
we want more. So that's how I felt about this, and I suppose I could say that's how I felt about The Boner Temple 2.
Right. Yeah.
But I thought it was better than the first one.
Okay.
I really, really enjoyed it. I
Right,
thought it
right.
was great. I thought it was really weird and unusual. Definitely, you know, was not what I expected in a good way. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh,
No,
it's very...
no.
Did you see 28 Years Later?
I've seen bits of it because I was watching bits in places that I shouldn't be watching it, and then the stream died.
Okay, were you watching on Pornhub or something? What do you mean? I don't know what you're
So
talking
I
about.
just had a terrible link.
Oh,
And
you
then-
were watching it like a pirate site or something?
Yeah.
Oh,
Just-
okay,
no,
yeah.
no. I wasn't
Oh,
pirated.
no,
I wasn't pirated.
Keith, that's illegal, by the way. So any police who are listening, Dirty Keith, that's what he does. Yeah, no, it's good. So another horror movie I watched was Ready or Not, because there's, now somebody recommended this to me. They know who they are. The sequel, Ready or Not 2, is
Okay.
like coming out, I think, in March. Maybe by the time this is up, maybe not.
Ooh.
I thought it was great, really fun horror, like dark kind of comedy horror movie.
Yeah.
It's about this woman, she marries into this family, and the first game they play is that she has to survive the night while we're all trying to kill her.
Oh,
So she's running around the mansion while
I've heard this. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
a big family game of hide and seek.
Yeah, but they have like guns
But
and
gonna kill you.
axes and
Yeah.
shit. Yeah.
And are they all trying to kill her, or are they all trying to kill like each other?
Her.
Just her. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so she was brought in to be the victim.
Sort of.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, it wasn't totally intentional. It's like whenever a person marries into this family, they have to play a game.
Oh, like
and
an
the game's
initiation.
random. The game, yeah, it's initiation, but the games are different every time.
Yeah, okay.
She just got hide and go seek, which is murder. Go find. So that's it. Yeah,
That's
it's good though. Yeah, I enjoyed the movie. It's good. Oh, my rating. I would give The Boner Temple 2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs?
Ready or not, I'd probably give like 1.5.
1.5 thumbs? Okay,
yeah, it's
yeah.
good. It wasn't like mind blowing, but
Yeah.
I would watch it again.
Okay, word
Which I know is Keith's standard.
It is.
The gold standard from Keith.
That's how I judge an L movie. The rewatchability of it.
Next movie is Keeper. It was done by Osgood Perkins, who also did Longlegs.
Oh, okay.
Done by St. This movie. Now, I loved Longlegs. I know a lot of people fucking hate Longlegs. I really liked Longlegs.
I loved Longlegs.
I thought it was great,
yeah.
but a lot of people really disliked it.
I suppose people don't really like the occult themes.
I guess.
you
I think
know.
a lot of people didn't like that. They didn't like the story. They didn't like Nicolas Cage's character.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, but I've known other people said they didn't. They thought it was
He was very
awful.
eccentric. Yeah.
Yeah, like way too out there.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I liked Longlegs. The other movie Osgood Perkins did that I've seen, The Monkey, I thought was shit. Did not like that at all. I thought it's like a horror comedy. I didn't think the horror worked. I didn't think the comedy worked. I just thought it was a bad movie.
That's sort of in line with those types of movies. I don't know what the genre is called. It's called like that. And you know the other movie like Thanksgiving? It's like
that's a fun movie.
slasher.
I like. Yeah, but that's Thanksgiving isn't really a comedy. That's just more of a lighthearted.
I don't know. Hilarious.
Well, it's comedy, but it's not meant to be a comedy. Like, it's a
Okay.
movie that just doesn't take itself seriously, and it's fun.
Oh, this movie was meant to be serious.
The monkey was meant to be and also funny at times.
Oh, okay.
I didn't think it was funny.
Didn't think it was funny. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, anyway, Keeper, I thought I liked it. It's a very small, self-contained movie. It's basically set in this one cabin in the woods. Basic story is the main character, she goes there with her boyfriend, and then things start going weird, and he starts acting weird, and maybe there's a witch in the woods.
Ooh.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a weird movie. It's very small, low-key. I just liked it.
Okay.
It's very self-contained. I thought it was a fun movie.
Yeah.
Another movie though I watched was
You were busy, man. You
I
were
was
busy.
last one. This is also done by Osgood Perkins, who did Longlegs, the Monkey, Keeper. This is his first movie, so I'm going back
Oh,
now.
okay. Yeah.
It's called The Black Coat's Daughter,
Okay.
also called February. I think you would really like this
Oh, yeah?
movie. I loved it.
Okay.
I thought it was up there
Is it real
with
like
Longlegs.
psychological?
No, it almost feels like it's like a prequel to Longlegs.
Ooh, okay.
It's very occulty.
Yeah.
Some of the shots in it could be directly taken from Longlegs,
Ah,
like with
I
the
see.
devil, that
Yeah,
kind of stuff,
yeah,
like
yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Basically, long story short, the movie, it's set in a girls' boarding school during like a kind of like a midterm break, and all the girls go home except for these 2 girls because their parents didn't come pick them up, and maybe somebody becomes a devil worshipper and shit goes down.
Sounds good. What was it called again?
The Black Coat's Daughter.
The Black Coat's
It's
Daughter,
also
okay.
called February, I
Okay.
think, depending on the market.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
I think you would really like it. It
Okay.
feels like it's set in the same world as Longlegs.
Nice. I'll check it out.
In that way.
Yeah.
So if you like Longlegs, you'll like it. So that's Mike's. Okay, so folks, Malibu Mike is back in business. You guys can stop giving out to me, but do keep sending me your horror movie recommendations. Actually, I got a few emails there from folk with some good horror movies to watch. I am keeping track of them. I'll get around to it daytime, nighttime, sometime. One more thing I
Okay.
do want to say is
Just one more thing.
is a trailer which I think everybody should watch if you're into horror movies. It just came out today. A teaser trailer I think came out a couple weeks ago, but the proper trailer came out today, which is not when you're hearing the podcast, if you can believe it. So it came out a couple of weeks ago from when you're hearing it, but the movie is called Hook 'em.
Hook 'em. Okay.
Yeah, trailer just came out today. It looks really good. The movie itself comes out in May. The movie is about this guy. He's an American guy, and he comes to Ireland to spread his parents' ashes
Okay.
in a hotel
Yeah.
that may or may not have a witch in it.
Ooh, that
In the
sounds
hotel,
good.
which
Yeah.
is enquires, which is like
Yeah.
Irish for hag.
Nice.
So it stars Adam Scott,
Oh,
who
okay.
I'm a fan of.
Yeah,
He's very funny in comedies. He was great in Severance from You Talking You Two to Me podcast. But what I think is, so it's set in Ireland, ding ding.
Yeah.
Adam Scott, like triple ding. It's directed by Damien McCarthy, who did Oddity and Caveat.
Oh, sick. Yeah.
It's his newest movie.
Nice. They're awesome.
So
Yeah.
I think that could be really good. The
Yeah.
trailer looked really, really freaky.
Yeah.
And I like Oddity. Caveat was pretty good.
Yeah.
Oddity I loved.
Yeah, really liked that,
So yeah.
I love watching movies that are set in Ireland because you get like we're not a big country, so every now and again you get a little, I know there.
You did a
Yeah,
DiCaprio
I've been there.
Yeah. So yeah, folks, that's Mike's horror movie review hour. Once again, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Stay tuned for, I'm sure Mike's horror movie reviews will be back eventually.
Yeah.
Whenever I get around to watch more horror movies.
Can't wait. I've got my own list there from listening to you now, so I can't wait to
Good.
dig in and get some of those movies watched.
Exactly. Don't let me know your thoughts.
Okay.
Because I don't care.
If I want your opinion, I'll give it to you.
Exactly. I'll tell you what you think. But now, folks, let's get into today's episode of the podcast. Jesus, we're almost 10 minutes into the fucking recording. Sorry about that, folks. I know it was like one of the complaints we get is like, we talk too much in video.
Yeah.
I like talking.
That's what a podcast is, isn't it? Banter, chatting.
That's it.
The crack,
Exactly.
having the crack.
Well, for those of you who are waiting for us to get into the story, your time has come, folks, because today we are going all the way back to the heady days of the roaring 20s for a trip to Chicago.
Chicago.
Did you ever notice that old people say Chicago?
Yeah, my mom said...
My dad says Chicago.
Yeah, I was like, there's no R in it.
I
She's
know.
like, it's a Chicago. It's like,
Yeah.
no R in it, stop.
I know.
Yeah.
Why do people do that?
I don't know. I wonder if it's just an Irish thing.
I don't know.
Or
Folks, let us know.
Yeah, let me know.
Yeah. So back then, back in the 20s, you get the Prohibition, that meant the mob ran the nightlife, and that was when, today's story, folks, two friends turned lovers were about to attempt the perfect murder for no other reason than they could. On May 22nd, 1924, in the early hours of the day, the body of a young boy was discovered in a drainage culvert under the Pennsylvania Railroad tracks near Wolf Lake on the south side of Chicago. The grim discovery was made by a Polish immigrant factory worker on his way home from work. Now, the victim in question was 14-year-old Bobby Franks. Franks was from a prominent and wealthy family who lived in the city's Kenwood district, an upscale neighborhood, home to some of the most well-off families in the whole state, which is no surprise, as the Franks family had been sent a typed ransom note shortly after he vanished. Nearby the body, a pair of distinctive horn-rimmed eyeglasses were found. Police immediately suspected that the glasses could only belong to the young boy's killer. Not only were the glasses unusual looking, but they were also found to have been made with a very rare hinge system. The hinges in question were only available through a single Chicago-based supplier, who quickly informed investigators that they'd only sold 3 pairs of glasses using that particular and patented hinge. So, 3 suspects already. Now, the first pair had been sold to a woman who was instantly ruled out. The second pair belonged to a lawyer who was found to have been traveling in Europe at the time of the killing. The third and final pair seemed to provide the most promising lead. They belonged to a 19-year-old University of Chicago alum named Nathaniel Freudenthal Leopold Jr.
What a name.
I know, back then you had names you could set your watch to. Now, detectives called on Leopold, and during formal questioning on May 29th, 1924, they asked Nathaniel Leopold for details of what he'd been doing the day of Bobby Franks' disappearance, to which he readily, almost too readily, gave them what seemed like a rock-solid alibi. He'd been driving around with his good pal, Richard Loeb, and the two of them had picked up a couple of girls, but they hadn't bothered to get the girls' last names, which is convenient.
As far as alibis go, it was believable, but still a little suspect. The detectives, they checked with Leopold's fellow University of Chicago student, 18-year-old Loeb, to corroborate the alibi. And though he initially gave a similar account, there were some odd inconsistencies with it.
And when asked about his glasses, Leopold claimed he had been birdwatching around that particular area recently and had likely dropped them from his pocket then. As investigators began looking at Leopold and possibly Loeb as suspects in the murder, Loeb gave an updated account that lined up much more neatly with Leopold's, and at least temporarily, was enough to throw detectives off the scent.
Something that came up that seemed to point in the direction of the pair's guilt was Franks being a cousin by marriage of Richard Loeb. So Loeb's being related to the victim, plus his friend's glasses being found near the body, was seen as way too out there to just be a coincidence.
Methinks it's no good. Now, this tenuous relationship, them being sort of related, was entirely incidental and had no bearing on Franks being selected as the victim. Yet, it provided a connection between the early suspects and the victim that warranted further scrutiny and possibly a deeper investigation. The most damning turn for the murderous pair came when investigators, their suspicions growing, sought to confirm Leopold's alibi from someone other than Loeb. This led to the discovery that Leopold's car had in fact been in the garage with his chauffeur at the time of the crime. The chauffeur's wife confirmed her husband's account. Leopold's driver told police he had been performing some maintenance and repairs that day, meaning there was no way Leopold and Loeb could have been driving around town in the car, as they had explicitly stated they had been doing, with a couple of gals, old damn flapper gals, whose surnames they could mysteriously had no idea what they were. Right? Yeah. Fucking hell, man. The police back then were kind of shy. Right. I mean, they were solving this case.
It was all there, yeah.
So the discovery that the alibi Leopold had provided was completely bogus led to detectives digging deeper and interviewing various people connected to both Leopold and Loeb. The spark that finally ignited the fumes of suspicion into outright accusation came in the form of a statement from a maid who worked for the Leopolds. When questioned, she told detectives that she had seen a typewriter in Leopold's room, but when officers searched for that typewriter in order to compare typeface samples to those on the ransom note, the typewriter was now mysteriously missing.
Now, there were many reasons for providing a false alibi. He could have been up to, all sorts of no good. But there was only one good reason for getting rid of the typewriter. As it would turn out, though, Leopold, he actually had two reasons to get rid of the typewriter. Two? So not only was it the device used to write the ransom note, but the machine itself was stolen property to begin with.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, having been pilfered during one of Leopold's and Loeb's earlier forays into the outlaw life.
So who were these mysterious University of Chicago students who are now also the main suspects in a horrific murder case that we shall get back to, folks? First, Nathan Leopold Jr., the man who would become known to time as simply Leopold. He was born November 19th, 1904 in Chicago, Illinois. He was the third son of German Jewish immigrants, Florence and Nathan Sr. The family were extremely well off and were able to provide the infant with the very best of everything. To say that he had all the chances afforded to him by both genetics and society at that time would be a huge understatement. Not only did he have a leg up from his parents, young Leopold was also gifted with a big old brain on him. Huge noodle. Brain noodle. Because his other noodle will also come into this story at one point too. His family claimed he had spoken his first words before even turning 5 months old. And if that sounds insane, that's because it probably was. But he truly was a smart cookie. He seemed to have a gift for language from an early age. He dabbled in over a dozen languages, but claimed to speak as many as 5 with fluency. Leopold, by all accounts, he was sort of an odd-looking fellow, though. Short and with prominent eyes that seemed to bulge from his head. He was sort of quite off-putting. Something that at first appeared completely innocent, actually quite healthy, but had a dark underside to it, was Leopold's fascination with birds. Now, I say fascination with birds, but it was more a fascination with death and taxidermy.
Classic.
Yeah. The interest that became an obsession with ornithology and taxidermy was kicked off by a visit to one of his uncles. And not only did Leopold amass a large and varied collection of birds, he would proudly brag to anyone who'd listen that he had killed the majority of his collection himself.
His father, in an innocent effort to indulge his son's interest, he applied for a special license for his son to be able to carry his .22 rifle through the public park. The license, it was granted. Afterwards, Leopold would often be seen walking through the park, gazing up at the trees with the rifle slung over his shoulder, but loaded and ready to shoot should he see a bird that he desired. Add to his ever-growing collection. His interest in birds, it would follow him throughout the rest of life as well.
But yeah, he said he was going bird watching. That was his excuse.
Yeah.
But he liked killing. That's one thing.
Big time. Yeah.
Now, Leopold began his further education studies at the University of Chicago, but took a brief year-long sojourn out to the University of Michigan, ultimately returning to Chicago to complete his undergrad degree. That university career began when Leopold was only 15 years of age. Naturally, beginning university at that age and having been coddled his whole life, despite being able to meet his peers on an academic level, Leopold was far behind socially. At a young age, Leopold discovered the work of philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, strongly coming to believe in Nietzsche's concept of the ubermenschen, or the Superman. Essentially, it's the dangerous idea, that some people are genetically superior to others, and it's their right to rule over these people. Now, the concept appealed greatly to Leopold, as he saw himself as a genius, and he sort of was a genius, but also he saw himself as one of these genetically superior people.
Oh shit, here we go again.
On June 11th, 1905, Richard Loeb, now his partner in crime, he would become also the third son to be born in his family. Being the third child, that would become the first of very many things Leopold and Loeb would have in common. Richard Loeb's father, Albert Henry, was a VP at Sears, Roebuck & Co., which was a very well-paying and regarded position. Loeb's mother, Anna Henrietta, was Catholic, while his father was a prominent member of the Jewish community. And just like Leopold, Loeb had his every whim catered to from a young age, but he was mostly guided by a dedicated governess named Miss Struthers. This guidance, coupled with the woman's natural affection for her charge, led to Loeb being able to graduate from the University of Chicago High School after only 2 years, having joined age 12.
Loeb and Struthers, they had a strangely close relationship, and she seemed to have like a really intense affection for him. When he was admitted to the university, Richard's parents, they saw her job with him, as finished, and they tried to pass her to their next job. But Struthers saw it completely different. She tried to persuade him that Richard still needed her guidance, but they were having none of it. With her parents not budging, Struthers, she decided that she'd rather resign her position with Loeb's than rather continue on without Richard.
Wow, that's how much of an effect, I guess, he had on the people around them. He was magnetic. People never wanted to leave his side. Wonder if that will come up again.
Ooh, is it? Yeah, there's something else weird going on there with those two, though.
Yeah, she was definitely like...
taking advantage of it. Oh, play with that noodle.
Now, in his own time, he loved reading history and crime books. And just like Leopold, who had begun his own university studies at 15, Loeb, starting university at 14, well, they should have found common ground between the two of them. In fact, it actually took a little while longer than most would have expected, as the two boys, Leopold and Loeb, when they first met, didn't take to one another at all.
I think they're just too similar.
Yeah,
they were the exact same person.
Exactly, yeah. So Loeb would go on to become the University of Michigan's youngest ever graduate in 1923 at just 17 years of age. It was Loeb's good looks that usually got him off to a good start with folk that ironically seemed to set Leopold against him. There was more than a smidge of jealousy to the dislike for sure, but given the intimate turn their relationship would take, it's surprising that Loeb took some time to warm to his future partner in crime. Likewise, Loeb didn't immediately take to Leopold either, but the disdain on Loeb's side was more to do with what he perceived as Leopold's haughty and sort of above everybody else attitude. Now, it was strange considering the two had so much in common, down to growing up in very similar circumstances and even knowing one another's families. In opposition to Leopold's off-putting first impression, Richard Loeb was considered much more friendly and outgoing, and he was a handsome-looking dude. Loeb also, though, he had a reputation for being pretty reckless and impulsive, another sign of his immaturity and overly insulated childhood, but also a possible indication of an underlying psychopathy.
He also liked to lie a lot, about anything. It really gave Loeb a thrill. It made him feel that he got something over on the person that he lied to, even if it didn't matter one bit. The lies, it began with Miss Struthers, whom he would tell he was reading for school when he was really reading crime novels. Then, as he got older, the lies, they were superseded by petty theft and stealing. Not that he needed to. Loeb, he had everything that he could ever need and more. He saw stealing as kind of a sport. It wasn't the material gain that gave him the buzz. It was the getting away with it, and he saw that as a victory. If he was caught, he would just simply pay for the goods, and it was just all forgotten about. The lying, the stealing, these were just a few more ticks on the old psycho scale.
For sure. He will tick the shit out of that scale we will get to. So the Leopold and Loeb families each owned homes just 2 blocks over from one another in Kenwood in Chicago, and the families mixed in similar rich folk circles, so the two boys knew one another from a very sort of early age, but it wasn't until the spring of 1920 when Leopold and Loeb found their paths crossing far more. By summer, they began to find the common ground that would provide the foundation for an infatuation that led to the cold and brutal murder of an innocent child. It wouldn't be until a fateful train journey, as the two traveled to the Loeb family estate in Charlevoix, Michigan, in early February 1921, that the first seeds of both murder and intimacy in the young men's relationship would be sown, let it be known. Each man had clearly become comfortable enough to be extremely vulnerable with the other, as they were both willing to admit their deepest, darkest desire to each other.
Dude, have you ever strangled a bird? You would love it.
Yeah.
It's
Keith,
fantastic.
You should be admitting your deepest and darkest desires to me on this podcast.
To everyone.
Yes, exactly. Wait, no, I'm not recording. Boop. You can say it now, keeps it safe.
Jeez.
So the revelations began with what nowadays would be a big moment in someone's personal life. Now, Leopold admitted he had sexual thoughts and romantic feelings towards the fellas.
And like this was a admission that, made to the wrong person, could have seen him in jail or possibly involuntarily admitted to a psychiatric hospital ward where, you know, he'd be chemically castrated or lobotomized, which has a bit of ring to it. You know, Leopold Loboto.
It does.
Yeah. Lobotomized Leopold.
That's good.
Yeah,
I like it.
But Leopold, he admitted that while he had gone on dates and even had sex with multiple women, it had always been under the pretense of expectations of society.
Society and stuff like that, yeah. Now, Loeb said that, and he said, I've got one better than that. You're gay.
Yeah.
Wait till you hear this shit. So, yeah, Loeb's own admission of his deepest and darkest desires had far darker implications. Loeb told Leopold that he had long dreamt of being an outlaw and living a life of crime, free of consequences. He told Leopold of how he had shoplifted and stolen from family and friends. Something Loeb was particularly proud of was how he had taught himself to pickpocket, skills he liked to show off to friends at school. Leopold replied by telling Loeb that Loeb's desires actually made complete sense to him. Leopold now went on to spew his favorite author, Nietzsche, and about the Ubermenschen and the Superman. Leopold believed that himself and Loeb were two such supermen. They had sex for the first time that evening in Loeb's bunk, following which Leopold essentially swore allegiance and even fealty to Loeb as long as they were together. And that would later become a formal arrangement wherein Loeb would exchange sex for Leopold, aiding him in his criminal endeavors. Soon after they returned from the summer retreat, Leopold would join Loeb at the University of Michigan, and the pair rented an apartment in Ann Arbor together. They were roommates.
Ooh.
Oh my god, they were roommates.
Yeah, you'll see how this going. Like, Loeb, I'm not sure if Loeb was gay or maybe he was bisexual. He just didn't give a shit. He was a psycho.
Yeah, he was a psychopath,
I feel like, I wonder if he was like using Leopold so he could just commit murder and do evil shit together.
Oh,
he just wanted a sidekick.
I feel a hunch about. I don't think he was gay at all. I think he just didn't have any emotions whatsoever.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I said, he was just using them completely.
Yeah. Leopold, who was, for sure. Like, when viewed through a modern lens, it's honestly kind of wild just how much of a disparity there was between the two men's secrets. One guy's secret was that he was gay. The other guy's secret was he's a psychopath and wants to murder people, which is a bit of a difference there. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that was Loeb. He wanted an accomplice. He wanted somebody to validate his twisted thoughts. And unfortunately, that's what he got. Leopold was so infatuated with Loeb, he declared he would do anything, absolutely anything at all, to make him happy, including helping him murder.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the relationship between Leopold and Loeb turned sexual from February of 21, continuing on until their arrest in 1924. The sexual side of their friendship was far more romantically motivated on Leopold's side rather than Loeb's. Loeb, like, he saw it as a way of control and a way of getting Leopold just to do what he wanted.
Basically, yeah. And given the way Leopold had seemed to take against Loeb when they first began to see more of each other due to sharing a friendship group, it's clear at this point that most of his disdain was to both hide his true attraction from others, but also be better to deny it to himself. Loeb, he did like Leopold as much as a psychopath can like anybody, but it was a one-sided, all the attraction was on Leopold's side anyway.
Yeah.
As far as their peers were concerned, most simply thought they were close friends, not lovers. One person, though, who discovered the truth was a law student at the University of Chicago named Hamlin Brookman. Brookman had taken up a job with the Loebs during summer break 1922. One evening, he'd walked in on the boys in bed together. Now, he realized almost immediately that they were both completely naked, so he made a hasty retreat. Hamlin would later claim that later on that very same week, he and the secret lovers had gone sailing on Pine Lake. And at one point, Loeb suddenly asked him, out of nowhere, "Do you swim?" Hamlin said he didn't. And shortly after, the boat just so happened to take a violent turn, tipping all three of the men into the water. Now, all three of them, they managed to swim back to shore, to the shock of Leopold and Loeb. See, Hamlin, he had taken the question, "Do you swim?" to mean, "Do you go swimming?" He had said no, but he could swim. He just didn't do it regularly. That's not how Loeb took it, and, Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Now, it would seem to reveal that maybe Leopold and Loeb were planning to let the young man drown and later report it as a tragic accident. And Hamlin, he reported the whole incident to Loeb's older brother, Alan, but Leopold and Loeb both denied the claims, and obviously Richard Loeb took his brother's side, and they fired Hamlin Brookman. Hamlin was obviously furious, and he told anybody who would listen about the pair's secret relationship, and rumors soon began to spread around school like wildfire.
Yeah, like despite attending a different school, the Hamlin, Leopold and Loeb quickly began hearing the same scandalous rumours being bandied about their own college. They were forced to try and spend as much time apart as they could, just douse the flames. But in spite of efforts, the rumours, they persisted to the point where Loeb, when he was invited to join a frat at Michigan U, it came under the condition that he could not associate with Leopold at all. Loeb, he agreed, and Leopold, he was heartbroken by this choice. It wouldn't be until after graduation, almost a year later, in 1923, before the boys came back together when Loeb enrolled in a class at Chicago U, where Leopold was also attending, and they soon rekindled their sexual relationship.
So L&L's adventures in criminality began small as extensions of Loeb's individual petty thefts. Emboldened and spurred on by the desire to impress one another, the seriousness of their crimes quickly escalated. They soon graduated from shoplifting and trying to cheat their own families during card games to life-endangering crimes. Petty theft became burglary and vandalism became arson. The arsons showed Loeb's true intentions more than any other at this point. He wanted attention. After arson attacks, he and Leopold would wait around and watch the gathered crowds and firefighters deal with the consequences of their actions. One of the boys' attempts at committing crimes without consequences was a burglary at Loeb's former frat house at the University of Michigan, during which they took a bunch of personal trinkets such as penknives and loose change, but also a camera. And most importantly, the typewriter they would later use to write the ransom note to the Franks family. The one Leopold would then conspicuously get rid of in the wake of his alibi falling apart, and just as the police were about to search his home. Loeb would do anything for a quick adrenaline hit. Leopold would happily follow along like a little infatuated puppy. It was after the burglary at that frat house that Loeb would first suggest they skip to the end of their outlaws to-do list. And sure, hey, listen, why are we faffing about here? Let's go right to the worst crime possible. One that would get them notoriety, satisfy Loeb's adrenaline addiction, and get them a little cha-ching as a nice little bonus. After a little back and forth debate, the pair finally settled on the crime. Or rather, the crimes. They would kidnap someone and collect a ransom. But all the while never intending to return the victim. The perfect crime, you might say.
Don't leave a paper trail.
But do leave a paper trail because you're typing out ransom now.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
They would plan it out, step by step. Neither man considered the possibility that they would ever get caught because they were ubermenschen.
They were freaking geniuses. It's not like when really taken down to its foundations, the driving force behind the crime, it was nothing more than pure boredom. When the world is at your feet and everything imaginable is suddenly a possibility, dark thoughts and twisted pathology, they can be a very dangerous thing. What might be the most terrifying part of the whole story was the victim selection and the process, or lack thereof. Despite being firmly set on committing a murder, there was never a victim.
In fact, right before settling on Bobby Franks, the boys had actually already had several more random victims in their sights. The closest call was for a 9-year-old boy who Loeb accosted and was in the process of weighing up how to isolate this boy and get him into their rented car when the boy, he just ran off. He could very well have been the one whose name was splashed across the newspapers over the next few weeks, but it wasn't. However, Bobby Franks, he seemed like the perfect choice. Not only was he much more likely to be persuaded to get into their rented car, Loeb knew his father had the kind of money that could pay a hefty ransom. Jacob Franks, Bobby Franks' father, was a Chicago-based watchmaker, as well as being a neighbor of the Loebs. In addition to the familial link through marriage, the Franks owned a house across the street from the Loeb's residence, so Bobby was well known to Richard Loeb, but not so well as to make it immediately obvious as to who was behind the kidnapping. Besides, the killers in waiting had already prepared their alibis, of course, and covered their tracks. They thought, anyway. They were driving a rented car that they'd hired under the alias Morton D. Ballard, and believed it couldn't be traced back to them. They didn't realize that by including Leopold's own car in their constructed alibi, they were already poking a huge hole in the story.
Yeah.
Having been rejected by the first possible victim, it initially seemed like fate was intervening when Bobby Franks turned down Loeb's offer of a ride home, being only a couple blocks over. Leopold quickly thought on his feet and remembered that Franks had occasionally played tennis on his family's court. He brought up wanting to talk about the rackets Franks had been using and wanting to purchase one for himself. That was enough to get the boy into the car and away from public view.
Now, exactly what happened next is it's kind of on shaky ground. Like, what's certain is that once he was in the car, Leopold and Loeb, they acted without fear of being seen by a passerby, and Bobby Franks was completely at the mercy of these two monsters. Which man did it isn't known, as neither could be believed in their accounts. So it's mostly true informed speculation as to who did the restraining / torturing and who did the driving. Just as it's up in the air as to who did the actual killing and the post-mortem maiming as was to come.
Yeah, no good though. It's thought that Leopold was behind the wheel, so he was ready to drive away once Loeb had the victim in the car. That left Loeb free to sit in the back behind Bobby Franks, who was in the front passenger seat. Almost as soon as Loeb was seated, he quickly and repeatedly struck the child in the head with the heavy handle of a chisel. The beating was more than enough to subdue the boy, yet Loeb dragged him to the rear of the vehicle where he gagged him by forcing a rag into his mouth and taping his mouth shut. Loeb then pushed Franks down into the footwell of the rear seats to obscure him from view. The chisel beating had been so severe that the boy had already succumbed to his injuries in the backseat. Leopold then drove the rented car to the spot up by Wolf Lake, where Frank's body would later be found. They'd chosen the place in advance incorrectly, thinking it would be isolated and out of view enough that the body would remain undiscovered until long after their ransom demands were paid, and it no longer mattered, that the boy was dead. The killers waited until the sun had gone down to move the body just in case anybody passed by. Once they felt safe, they stripped Frank's body naked, and together they poured hydrochloric acid on the boy's face and genitals in order to try and delay or even prevent his identification. The genital mutilation was ostensibly to hide that Franks was circumcised, as this was far less common in the wider population at the time and would have pointed any investigation to the Jewish community. It's more than a little insane that they thought of something as small as that detail, yet failed to recognize that Leopold had left his expensive and distinctive glasses at the dump site. Like, how the fuck do you leave those of all things behind? What a gobshite. Meanwhile, Bobby had not returned home as expected, which caused his family to immediately report him missing. In fact, by the time that Leopold and Loeb had arrived back in Chicago, the search had already begun, although it hadn't yet gone into, full gear. That changed after Leopold placed a call to the Franks' house and spoke to the boy's mother. He told her his name was George Johnson and that he had her son, and they would soon be sending instructions on how to pay the ransom they were demanding.
As soon as the call was completed, Leopold and Loeb, they calmly went about burning the boy's clothes and together used the stolen typewriter to write up the ransom demand. So their last official act of the evening was to clean out the rental car, scrubbing out the bloodstains from the rear floor, and with their work done, having just committed a horrific cold-blooded murder, Leopold and Loeb sat down casually and played cards like nothing had happened.
You're just another day in the rig, you know yourself. The very next day, the note was delivered to the Franks household, followed by a second phone call from Mr. Johnson with instructions on how to pay the ransom. Now, the whole crime in itself was wildly, and I mean wildly, overcomplicated. So get a load of this, right, how they were supposed to pay the ransom. It involved sending an initial ransom note following the kidnap, which would send the victim's father to a train where he would find a second note that would instruct him to drop the ransom from the moving train. Of course, now none of this bore out, as the entire whole escapade tripped over its own feet before reaching the first hurdle. But it would be hilarious if the whole shambles hadn't cost an innocent boy his life. Now, the convoluted nature of the crime came back to bite the perpetrators in their collective arses at pretty much every step of the process, including at the very first one. The instructions to the Franks family were so ludicrously overwhelming that someone relaxed and able to concentrate would still have trouble keeping them all in mind, let alone like the unique stress of finding out that your young son has been kidnapped, which I'm sure probably doesn't make you think very clearly. Under immense pressure, Bobby's father struggled to recall the insane amount of detailed instructions he'd been ordered to follow, including the address at which he was supposed to go to retrieve the next set of instructions. Basically, these two clowns were so full of themselves and thought they were just like the dog's bollocks. They had this whole treasure hunt set up for the victim's father and expected him to just dance through it.
Yeah.
Makes sense. It's like insane.
It's mad.
They just thought it was would you like to play a game? You know, that kind of shit.
God, it must have been so like stressful for the father. Like not even just like your son's being kidnapped, but also like hang up the phone. Like what did he say? He's like, oh God, just trying to remember everything. And it's like, my son's life depends on this, and I've forgotten everything just because it was so goddamn convoluted.
Yeah, overly complicated.
But as the kidnappers prepared to send new instructions and reset the whole routine because he'd forgotten, news broke of the discovery of Bobby Frank's body, and the whole shebang was shot to shit. Everyone knew that they were now looking for murderers and not just kidnappers. Leopold and Loeb, they shrugged off the loss, no doubt thinking that they could, just try again when the heat died down. Together, they got rid of the typewriter, correctly knowing that it would directly tie them to the crime, but wrongly assuming that its disappearance wouldn't be noticed. So the two, they dumped it in Jackson Park Lagoon.
And as the two men followed the case in the news and happily discussed the shocking murder with friends and family, little did they know that the police were in the process of tracking down the 3 people in Chicago who had purchased the same set of glasses, and that they were about to get to number 3, Nathaniel Leopold. Meanwhile, not knowing that they were about to be directly implicated by evidence, Loeb did his best to make sure the prosecution would have plenty of witnesses when he literally directed a couple of reporters to the same drugstore that Bobby's father was supposed to have gone to in order to get the second instructions. It's like literally, how do you know the kidnapper's instructions? Don't worry about it. But the kidnapper told them to go right there. It's like, what? To make matters worse, one of the reporters asked him what he thought of the victim, to which Loeb replied, and this is what he literally said, quote, "If I were to murder anybody, it would be just such a cocky little son of a bitch as Bobby Franks." Probably not the best thing to say. This guy has just been kidnapped and murdered.
He's like, this'll throw him off.
Yeah.
What a dipshit.
Yeah. It's almost as if Loeb thought the police would think he was too obvious, hiding in plain sight, I believe they call it. And
no, he was just in plain sight.
Yeah, he was just in plain sight, very obviously in plain sight. The frat house typewriter, by the way, was ultimately recovered from the dump site at Jackson Park Lagoon on June 7th, over 2 weeks after the murder.
So with their story in tatters and all of the physical, circumstantial and witness evidence pointing right at Leopold and Loeb, plus investigators having no other suspects, it would be a real struggle to dig their way out of this hole that they were in.
Yeah, and as it turns out, in maybe the most intelligent move they made throughout the whole tale, they didn't even bother. As soon as Loeb was confronted with the mountain of evidence that the police had basically said it had to have been him and Leopold, he straight up said, "Yep, you got me." All right. They did not try and deny it at all. And when I say he confessed, he basically did exactly the shitty thing you'd expect a psychopath to do, and he blamed everything on Leopold. Loeb claimed he had just been along for the ride. Well, actually, quite the opposite. He was the driver, with Leopold doing all of the killing and all of the planning that led up to and followed the act. Upon learning that his lover had confessed, Leopold, he folded up on his own tail and gave his own account. Apart from the minor details of who did the actual killing and who did the driving, it matched up with Loeb's evidence and account. On May 31st, 1924, the state's attorney publicly announced that they had secured confessions from both men. But there you go, it's like the whole thing of who was in love with who. Loeb immediately threw Leopold under the bus.
Yeah.
Leopold didn't.
Yes.
So the men's subsequent trial was a serious spectacle and attracted national attention to the Cook County Criminal Courthouse in Chicago, even being labeled the crime of the century, which wasn't the moniker the papers like to throw around too freely. I mean, crime of the century? It's only 1924, guys. You're still got another 75 years to go. So,
way to call it early.
Exactly. Yeah. Stop the count. The alleged killers' families went all out in their son's defense, as was expected. They even went so far as to hire none other than celebrity lawyer of the times, Clarence Darrow, to defend them. Rumors at the time had Darrow's price at $1 million, though that figure is highly disputed and never was never confirmed. His actual fee was around $65,000, which in 1924 money is still an ungodly amount, but nowhere near the million that would have been commanded by very few people outside of nation states at the time. So Clarence Darrow immediately earned every one of those 6.5 million pennies when he told the men that by going to trial and pleading guilty by reason of insanity, well, that would almost certainly lead to both men being convicted and executed. Instead, the best option for Leopold and Loeb was to throw themselves on the mercy of the judge and confess completely. Just as you'd expect from someone like Darrow, it was both moral and pragmatic. Having gotten Leopold, Loeb, and each man's family on the side, Darrow then entered a guilty plea on behalf of his clients. He somehow did the best thing for the client, the victim, and himself, all at the same time. And Leopold and Loeb's defense had essentially put all of their eggs in one basket. Now, with the plea accepted, all they could do was sit through the sentencing hearing as the prosecution presented almost 90 witnesses, hoping to secure a death sentence for both killers. By way of mitigation, Darrow and the defense called mainly expert witnesses, basically in the form of extensive testimony from psychiatrists who had examined both of the two men.
Yeah, and the psychiatrists, they seem to be in the consensus that both men had abnormal pathologies. And while ultimately in control of what they did, they weren't exactly starting from the same point as most of us were. In terms of comprehending, what is morally right and what is murdering a child.
How do you say it?
How do you say
a
it?
child?
Yeah, there's no nice way of saying it. One of the testifying psychiatrists who had spent time examining Leopold told the court and Judge John R. Calvary that Leopold had described the ultimate decision to kill as being on the same level as a decision of whether to not eat a sandwich.
As you do.
So at that moment he thought that killing Franks might bring him some pleasure. So he just went along with it.
Although both Leopold and Loeb each persisted in claiming that the murder hadn't brought them any happiness, Leopold said that after the murder, he felt just as before he did it, which in itself is pretty disturbing, given how little either man had been affected by the actual murder. Further mitigating circumstances presented on the killer's behalf included claims of prior sexual abuse in Leopold's case, and even that growing up with too much money had twisted the men's psyche in the direction of murder. They're just too rich.
Oh, boo-hoo.
Boo-hoo, boys. Affluenza. Both the defense and prosecution tried to spin the scandalous revelation of Leopold and Loeb's sexual relationship to their own ends. The prosecution labeled the men as perverts and sick, choosing to present the affair as a choice and a moral failing, while the defense also tastelessly used the social consideration of homosexuality at the time as being a psychological deformity, basically to indicate that the men were indeed not fully in control of their actions. They're not responsible for killing somebody. They're gay. That's basically the defense they tried to use.
That classic one.
Yeah. Both men, by the way, they would also later admit that they had fully intended on killing your man back in the day who had uncovered them, Hamlin Brookman, when they tried to drown him, but basically they never put that plan into action. Perhaps they never got far enough and got caught before they could.
Yeah, right. The prosecution, they also called friends and family of the victim, Bobby Franks. One of the saddest revelations to come from these statements was regarding Bobby's short trousers, going from which to long pants was then seen as a key marking moment in transition from adolescence to adulthood. Just a day before Bobby was killed, his mother had been discussing taking her son for his adult trousers. Her son was growing up and ready to see the world. That was unfortunately cut short.
That's gas, though, that back in the day, kids literally wore shorts all the time and only adults were allowed to wear pants.
I remember, my father-in-law, I remember him telling me about that. He said just as a kid, he just always wore shorts. He's like, in the winter and all, you just wear shorts.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's mad,
isn't it? It's nuts. Yeah, he was like, I think he was saying, it was literally when we were about 14, 15. He's like, finally got some trousers and cover up those knees.
Yeah. So in a tale full of small ironies, maybe the most bittersweet of them all is an incident that took place a couple of weeks before the murder. Little Bobby Franks, completely naive of the course of events that would leave him dead having already begun, was taking part in a team debate session with his school. One of the topics to be argued, the validity of the death penalty as a punishment. Franks argued passionately against the capital sentence ever being imposed, even for the worst crimes. In an argument that would ultimately sway the judges and earn his team the win, he passionately stated that only God is permitted to take a life, and that punishment should be reformative, never vindictive. So while Loeb's criminal motivation was clearly more down to how his brain was wired, basically he was a psychopath, Leopold's was pretty different. His reasoning, as we kind of discussed already, came down to wanting to impress his boyfriend, but needing to justify the acts to himself and not drown in guilt, he turned to philosophy. Concepts of Superman and individual hedonism provided him with enough of a buffer between his actions and real-world moral responsibility for him to logic his way out of any potential emotional ramifications. Leopold's philosophizing made him every bit as dangerous as his pal, though, the way he was able to logic his way out of basically any regret or guilt. He tacked onto the idea of him and Loeb's innate superiority to others, the concept of individual hedonism, basically amoral selfishness as a lifestyle. Whatever would bring him the most pleasure in the moment, consequences be damned. And that was inherently the right thing to do because it would bring him happiness. As a philosophy, very shitty. Honestly, this is like an anti-philosophy episode if this is the kind of shit they're
Pure philosophy, I'd say.
Yeah. So ultimately, Clarence Darrow, the defense, he would present what many considered the finest speech of his distinguished legal career as his last-ditch attempt to sway the court away from the Green Mile. The speech, it lasted 8 whole hours, if you can believe that.
Jesus.
So I'm not going to be reciting the whole thing, but honestly, after reading it, whether you believe the lads should be fried or no, you'll have to admit it was a pretty good speech from a talented raconteur.
Yeah, he essentially blamed the boys' mindsets of seeing human life as worthless for being brought up in the wake of World War One. Darrow, he claimed that all of society had suffered a shift in their collective mindset following the horrors of the conflict, which is, I have heard that before with when we've gone through other true crime, especially after World War II and stuff.
Especially a lot of people who grew up in there would go on to, people who were kids during World War II became serial killers when they grew up in, the 60s and 70s. That's why there were so many serial killers. Golden age of serial killers, the 70s. Yeah, because they had been kids during the trauma of war, basically. Yeah. Darrow's handling of the case has and had a lot of critics, with valid criticisms including his burying of key psychiatric evidence that conflicted with the story he wanted to tell, and for basically denying that free will is a thing. Regardless, he did his job and he did it well. The judge was swayed. In place of the very possible death by hanging that many expected, on September 10th, 1924, the court imposed a sentence of life in prison for the murder, followed by another 99 years each for kidnapping. Both men's sentences began in Gillette Correctional in Illinois, where they performed menial labor. Leopold was assigned to the prison's rattan factory, while Loeb similarly made chairs.
The men actually remained in contact and stayed friends, with Leopold claiming that he continued to try and persuade his friend to confess that he was the real killer. But Loeb, he said he wouldn't do it, allegedly telling Leopold that not knowing he did the actual act of killing was the only comfort for his mother, or Momsy, as he called her.
Jesus Christ. Momsy. Fucking hell.
Yeah, he basically said he couldn't take that away from her. Bless.
Yeah, glad he feels so sorry for his mom, not for the boy he killed. Prison staff had been instructed to keep the pair apart as much as possible so that they didn't see, too much of one another, and they were finally separated, seemingly for good, in 1925, when Leopold was transferred out to Stateville Pen in Crest Hill, Illinois, where he was put to work in the prison's short factory and eventually in the library. He also got himself a side gig as the assistant to the prison chaplain, despite being pulled up on petty infractions almost constantly throughout his time in prison. For some of the occasions when his offenses weren't quite so petty, as in the time he aided in the escape of 7 prisoners, Leopold found himself in solitary confinement on multiple occasions. Loeb, meanwhile, remained in Gillette, working the yard, delivering messages, and even becoming the clerk to the deputy warden, a trusted position. Then, after 5 years apart, in 1930, Loeb was transferred out to Stateville Penitentiary too. Reunited, the former co-conspirators began spending much more of their time together, with the order to keep them apart seemingly not following them there. Loeb worked the greenhouse and grounds as a landscaper, and together the men were instrumental in the expansion of the prison's education and schooling system. Over the next 10 years or so, they were able to bring both high school and even junior college curriculum to the prison. Loeb's apparent attempts at bettering himself and giving back came to a sudden and violent end on January 28, 1936, when fellow inmate James Day attacked him in the prison showers. The attack with a straight razor, which was allegedly in retaliation for Loeb coming on today, left Loeb with more than 50 individual slash wounds. Loeb was rushed to the hospital's infirmary, but succumbed to his wounds soon after. Day's account was published, and his actions actually praised in some of the newspapers at the time, despite even the prison warden believing Day murdered Loeb, and there was no evidence that Loeb was ever coming on to him or a sexual predator in and out of prison. The killer was ultimately found not guilty after a short trial in June 1936. Leopold would later back Loeb again, claiming that Loeb would never have propositioned anybody, and if anything, the proposition came from James Day, and it was turned down by Loeb, leading to his murder. Now, you'd think that's where the story ends. You got one man dead, the other fated to die in prison, but no! Leopold actually lived on and continued teaching and building up the prison's school system, right on throughout the World War II years. Over the decades, Leopold had written what would become, in 1958, his autobiography, Life Plus 99 Years. The book landed on the New York Times bestseller list for 14 weeks and was instrumental in Leopold successfully petitioning for parole on March 13, 1958, following dozens of failed attempts over the 33 years in prison. As part of his release conditions, Leopold needed steady employment, which he received in the form of a job as a medtech in Puerto Rico with the Brethren Service Commission, run by the Church of the Brethren. Leopold gave a lot of credit to the church as to why he had been successfully able to reintegrate into society. He briefly hit the headlines in 1959 when he sought an injunction against 20th Century Fox and the release of the Richard Fleischer-directed movie Compulsion, starring Dean Stockwell, Bradford Dillman, and Orson Welles as their defense attorney, which was based on the 1956 novel that was itself influenced by Leopold and Loeb's crimes. I feel like you're kind of pushing it there.
Yeah, right.
If it was actually based on his book or his life, then
maybe. Yeah.
But it was well, whatever. In his civil suit, Leopold claimed that the movie defamed him, but his petition was thrown out by a judge who reminded him that he had literally confessed to the crime of the century. See, so defaming him would be sort of hard to do.
Yeah, I have very little sympathy for this guy.
Yeah, exactly. Do not give a shit. Now, Leopold continued to indulge in his bird watching, being a prominent member of Puerto Rico's Natural History Society. Despite the marriage to widow and florist Gertrude Garcia de Quevedo on February 5th, 1961, Leopold would continue to have relationships with men throughout the rest of his life. Many of the men he saw were fellow ex-cons he had met in prison, and at least one of those trysts involved an underage person. Wow. So should have resulted in statutory rape charges, but no prosecution ever came. The same goes for the accusations of fraud with a charity Leopold was involved in, so when he was given all the credit to his church for keeping him straight, it turns out not so much. Straight in any way, shape, or form. But even with all of his continued accusations of criminality, Leopold managed to earn a master's degree from the University of Puerto Rico before becoming a researcher with the state's health department. Later, he'd work in housing development and ran an urban renewal scheme. Just guy living fucking multiple lives with all the shit he's getting up to. And Leopold's life, his surprisingly long fucking life, ended August 29th, 1971, when he died of a heart attack resulting from diabetes complications. When he was 66 years of age. But that was a hell of a 66 years.
Right, finally.
When he finally fucking died. Jeez, I thought his story would never end. And it all comes back then to poor old 14-year-old Bobby Franks, who he brutally murdered with his boyfriend. I mean, who knows who murdered him? Probably Loeb, but Leopold at least helped.
Yeah.
And then, pouring acid on his face and his dick and balls. And then, Jesus, it's a horrifying story.
Yeah, he just seems to spend the rest of his 6 years being a piece of shit as well.
Yeah, he just being an absolute dick. I mean, these two guys thought they were the smartest motherfuckers who ever done lived.
Yeah. That's the whole foundation of his whole story. It's just bored rich people.
Bored, this is like the White Lotus or some shit.
Yes,
story. It feels right out of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go. That's the story of Leopold and Loeb and the crime of the century. And two dickheads who thought they were smarter than everybody else and turned out to be not so.
No, not at all.
But there you have it, folks.
Yeah.
That is today's episode of the TCP, the That Chapter podcast. Myself and Kitty Cat will be back next week. You know, every Monday morning you get a brand new episode from me and himself. So look forward to that.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have some more dark history and murder and spooky stuff and hauntings and all stuff. We really do need to do a listener story.
Yes,
soon.
yes, we definitely do.
Keith is so happy about that suggestion.
It's been so
It was
long.
Halloween was the last time we did it, actually.
What? Yeah,
Yeah.
geez, that was ages. Yeah, we need to get back on
We'll
that.
do one soon.
Yeah.
Hold us to that because we are very shit at doing it. But we will do it soon.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll catch you next time.
And I'll see ya.
All right, bye. Sorry, I'm fucking sweating. Let me just take the fucking thing off.
Leave that in.
Let's get naked in the studio.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.